So a year ago, I handed in my resignation to my corporate job and I jumped on a plane to the beautiful island of Grenada. And ever since then, I've been crisscrossing the Atlantic back and forth, living and working by coastal. I haven't planned what I'm going to say today, so it's not scripted and I hope I don't waffle on. But there is a lot that goes into leaving your corporate job, setting up a business, and then living on both sides of the Atlantic. So let's get into it. So I thought I'd speak about why I left corporate and then what living by coastal looks like. So I worked in corporate for nearly 30 years, 25 of which was in the criminal justice system. And the reason why I got into it was because I wanted to be in the business of helping people change. And I realized that in nearly every position that I've been in, it has been about supporting and helping other people get from point A to point B. But working in that organization really made me feel that I wanted to do something for myself. I've always wanted the freedom to be able to work for myself anyway. And I thought maybe I'll set up an organization that will help people in a more individualized way. And as time went on, things changed, resources would fall. It got harder to retain and also hire really good staff. And there were lots of changes that would happen to policies that were more linked to politics than people. And it stopped resonating with me. And then I was introduced to coaching. And long story short, I got certified and realized that this was the path that I wanted to be on. I wanted to be on a path where I was helping people to get from point A to point B, not because they had done things wrong and were ordered to change, but I wanted to work with anyone who was motivated to get unstuck from where they were and move forward in their lives. And as much as I wanted to get into coaching, I sat on that business idea and kind of dabbled in it on and off for about 8 years until 2023, when other responsibilities and other things started happening in my life. I realized that my parents were really going up in age and down in health, and I needed to do a bit more to support. Previously, I wasn't able to because my children were a lot younger and I've always solo parented, and I never had the support system that many people may have experienced. It's always just been me. So at that time, they'd gotten a bit older and I thought, right, it's time that I can actually do a bit more for my parents. Prior to that, when I thought about starting a business and going into coaching, I had visions of something like this, sitting on the beach or by a pool in any country that I chose and just working with clients anywhere in the world. And I've been able to do that. I work with clients on 4 different continents, but I have the freedom to be able to set my own working hours. So 2023 was the year when I decided that I really needed to move forward on my plans because there were other things at play. And this is why I always say that it's really important to get clear on your why, because I had a why. I knew that I wanted to leave my corporate job. I knew that I wanted to work for myself. I knew that I wanted this, but I didn't move on it because my why wasn't strong enough. When my why took in something else, the responsibilities that I had as a daughter, and at the same time, I looked around at what was happening at work and I thought, I don't really want to be here anymore. My why took on a deeper and firmer meaning. So battery died, and I've also ended up at another location, which is a lot less windy. And we'll try this again. So the way my why changed, I knew that I wanted to get out of my job. I had had enough at that point, and then it coincided with the fact that my parents needed more support. I wanted the freedom to be able to come out here whenever I wanted to without having to negotiate annual leave, without having to count down annual leave as well, because 26 days sounds like a lot, but it's not when you have to deal with 11-hour flights and jet lag and no other time for yourself during the year. And so that's when it changed. And so just over a year later, I was able to hand in my notice September 2024. My last day at work was October 2024. And coincidence upon coincidences, when I stepped on a plane this year, it was actually the anniversary of my very last working day last year, and I knew that it was somewhere around those days, and I didn't actually realize until I was over here the day later. And then my brother was also sending me congratulations on your 1-year anniversary, and I was like, oh my goodness, I was actually flying out of the country on what was the anniversary of my last day at work. And so I was able to get the time freedom that I wanted. I haven't worked from anywhere in the world, because of my responsibilities have meant that it has always been Grenada thus far, but I no longer have to request annual leave. I set my working hours the way I want to. I can come out to the beach whenever my manager tells me to. you know I get to do things on my own time, in my own schedule. And I was about to say that I haven't worked by the beach. I have. I've gone down to one of the resorts where it's usually quite quiet during the daytime, and I've been able to work right next to the beach with the water just lapping up next to where I'm having my lunch and working. And everywhere is going to have its struggle. I've realized that I am now part of what's called the sandwich generation. I've got young children, well, young-ish children who are not totally independent, but, I don't have to worry about babysitters or anything. But I have elderly parents. And so I'm in the middle of that where I have responsibilities on both sides. And it hasn't been easy being a solo parent where the majority of the parenting fell on my shoulders. I've just adapted to getting things done and doing it on my own. So that's been my story. But whatever you choose, there is going to be a struggle. If I stayed within corporate, there was going to be a struggle. And coming out here, it's just a different type of struggle, and you just have to choose which type of struggle you want. I prefer this struggle over the struggle of worrying about who covered for me whilst I was on leave, and how many annual leave days I have left, and what flexi leave is over, and having to negotiate meetings and all that kind of stuff. The struggle of having to go back and forth over the Atlantic and have my parents over here and my children over the other side. That's a struggle that I can deal with and feels better because it is 100% for me and my family. So what does it look like going back and forth across the Atlantic between two different coasts? So firstly, I would say that there is a preference, and I think many people who live a bi-coastal kind of life do have a preference. My preference obviously is here, this coast, and when I'm on the other coast, I'm constantly thinking about when I'm next coming back out here. When I go back to the UK, sometimes I do find it difficult to eat because I know that the food is not as fresh as it is out here. A lot of what I eat comes straight out of the garden. So it's as organic can be. There's nothing sprayed on it, and to go back and get the packaged fruits and veg and all that kind of stuff is not easy. So that's one of the things. And like I said, there's a preference with being here. I cannot stand winters. Last winter, I managed to avoid it. And that is going to be what I do. What I'm going to try to do from now on is organize my time so that I can sidestep the winters and be here rather than over there for them. The other thing to get your head around if you're bi-coastal is that there's going to be time changes and the time zones and all that kind of thing. And my goodness, so it's usually either 5 hours or 4 hours behind being in Grenada to the UK. And the last time I was here, what I did was I thought, okay, let me just assimilate and change my laptop time. And that threw all of my appointments out. I can't even tell you to this day what the actual time of some of those appointments was because my laptop thought it was one thing and then I thought it was another thing, and I missed so many meetings. So what I do what I do with the differences in time zones now is I just leave the laptop on UK time. If I'm dealing with people in the UK, I just use UK time and just do it for a time that's going to suit me here. If I'm working with people in Europe, the same thing. For clients in the States, it's easier to align it to Caribbean time, and I put it in my diary, in my calendar for the time that it aligns to UK time. I have a ledger in my notebook that in probably about 3 of my notebooks, so that I can flip to the front and see what times correspond to what times. And in Google Diaries, thankfully, there is a way that you can have 2 time zones sitting next to each other. So that really does help. I am not changing the time on my laptop again because that caused too much problems. The other thing with the time zones is I'm not a morning person, and I'm not going to be getting up at 5 a.m. to do meetings and all that kind of stuff. So, but then what I do is when I am over here, I'm not a morning person, but I do get up early. I think it's because I know that I have the responsibility of my parents, and it's just a nice place to wake up to. So I guess that's why I wake up really early. But After I do my morning routine, there's things that I do in the morning, and then I, help out with my parents. By the time I am ready to sit down and do my work, it's usually afternoon in the UK. So one of the drawbacks, and it is what it is, I miss what happens in the mornings on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. So it feels like I'm a little bit behind, but it is what it is. And I just schedule my posts and do what I need to do. And I will change, the times for my lives and different things. I think that's one of the main drawbacks, actually, and probably because like it's an 11-hour flight to get over here. If you forget something, you forget something. You can order Amazon Prime, but it's going to cost the earth, and it will take however long, I don't know. So, there's a couple of things that I actually forgot this trip, and I got here and I was just like, damn, 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 it is what it is. I've forgotten it. So that's the thing where I have duplicates of certain things. So there's some things that I don't keep carrying back and forth. I just keep one of it here, and I have one of it when I'm on the other side. So those are the things that you just have to plan for: is what do you use a lot of, and what are the things that you don't mind carrying back and forth. So I'd say that that's one of the things that you have to think about when you're living bi-coastal. There may be certain comforts. So when I'm in the UK, I've got two separate areas in the house where I can work from and feel comfortable. When I'm over here, not so much. I have to be a little bit more creative in how I work and where I work. There's drawbacks and there's differences and there's pluses and minuses on both sides. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. I didn't plan to live bi-coastal like this. I'm here for a couple of months and there for a couple of months, and I didn't plan it like that. But that's where I always say that you need to review, reassess, and be able to, and open to pivot as needed. You can sit down and you can plan out your life in the way that you think it's going to go. But when you actually start working and actually start doing a plan, that's when you're going to see what needs changing and what needs moving around and rejigging, and you just go with it. You have to be open to change when you're making any type of change in your life. So that's a bit of an overview when it comes to leaving my corporate job and living and working in a bi-coastal manner. If you've got any questions about leaving corporate, surviving corporate, setting up a business, working it on both sides of the Atlantic, feel free to ask. My channel is all about surviving corporate, making that transition, the mindset that you need, tips and practical strategies. I have a school community that you can join, and on there we're looking at how we do those things, including setting up multiple streams of income so that you are able to take care of yourselves if you do want to transition out of your corporate job, or just if you want to have multiple streams of income. You cannot rely on one in this day and age, and we've known that for quite a few decades now. So thanks for coming with me. This has been a bit of an extended lunch break for me, and this is actually one of my new favorite beach on the island, because it is always so quiet. And look at it, it is so quiet and so calm here. Because what caused this part of the beach to be quiet and calm means that the other side of the beach has slightly been ruined, but that is a whole other story. But have a look at, I'm going to finish off my lunch break in there before I go home. And thank you for coming along with me. And if there's anything else that you want to hear about, want to understand about working and living in a bi-coastal manner, leaving your corporate job for freedom, feel free to ask. Until the next video, bye.